Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name is Renee McKenna. I'm a therapist, parent, and shamanic healer. And I'm here with Shawn Murphy, who is also a parent and a spiritual consultant and author of the 4-part book series, Torn Between Two Worlds. And this is part 4 of our 10-part series on spiritual parenting. And today we're going to talk about setting high expectations and letting go of outcomes. Shawn, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Renee. I'm really excited about our series because we both are passionate about helping young children to gain resilience in their lifetimes, and so when they reach the difficult teenage years, that they have strength to go through some difficult times. And this is one of the important ones. This setting high expectations and letting go of the outcome, and it essentially means that as parents, we're trusting the process, and we're not saying you have to reach this goal, you have to reach this goal, you have to reach this goal, but trust the process. Let your child become everything that they can, and let them shoot for high goals. And I remember when my daughter started swimming at the age of 3, by the time she was 6, she was like, I'm going to be an Olympic swimmer. We thought, great, you're going to be an Olympic swimmer. And that just pushed her. And by the time she was 12, she had enough swimming. Physically, she wasn't big enough to be a competitive. She had a height disadvantage. But
I have one of those.
Swimming had given her so much as far as self-confidence. It gave her the ability to push herself, to beat the taller kids in the pool, and it had served its purpose. And that's what, letting go of the outcome as a parent was difficult for me to say, okay, you're not going to swim anymore. You've been doing it for how many years? But she moved on to something better, on to dance.
Particularly at that age, at 12, the kids will often have a really big switch. I think about my nephew, who's actually not physically my nephew, but he's my nephew of spirit. And he was an amazing baseball player. And his uncle is a baseball coach. So it was in his blood, and he had all this extra help. He was on 2 traveling baseball teams. He breathed baseball until he was 12. And then he started to lose it. And because he had put in so much and was, connected with these teams, he stayed for another probably 2 years. But by the time he was 14, he said, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm done. I don't enjoy it. And he also moved on to other things. And so letting go, so much of this series of parenting is about the parents, right? And all the things that we can learn and apply for ourselves that we teach to our children. And that's, to me, the great gift of parenting, is that it actually gives us an opportunity to relive our own childhood in some ways, to relearn things that we didn't learn or weren't taught to us because people didn't have them or for whatever reasons. And to really, many of us are motivated to do for others what we may not just do for ourselves. I know that was true for me. And so this idea of setting high expectations is something that we can let go of, that we can learn for ourselves, and letting go of the results. What does that mean for us as parents, of course, with our children, and what their behavior or performance or what they choose to do is, but also it's incredibly instructive spiritual principle for all of us, right? To set high expectations. I just did a podcast this week in my Spiritual Psychology podcast on the 4 Agreements, the book by Don Miguel Ruiz. And, and one of the agreements is to always do your best. And I think that is the thing that we're up against with our own ego and our own humility and reality, which is that my best may not mean that I'm going to win a race, but knowing and being satisfied with my own personal best, and that that's my gift to put out into the world, and to trust that whatever unfolds from that is what's unfolding in my life, and it's okay and appropriate for me. So that balance is really challenging in our very competitive, hierarchical, better than you, somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose culture. The idea of our personal best being satisfied with just the I think about the other agreement, the first one, which is be impeccable with your word. It's like just being authentic and giving it a good effort really is the recipe for a good life, I think.
Yes, and there are so many different areas in a child's life or in a person's life where they can really shoot for the stars.
Mhm.
Whether it's in a hobby, or if it's in a sport, or if it's you know many different areas in how you help people. Just shoot for the sky. And then the other aspect, which I had to learn throughout my life, is letting go. And letting go is hard, because letting go has couldas, wouldas, shouldas, all that with it, and that's the negative energy that we don't want to carry around with us. We need to be able to let go. When something has served its purpose and its time in our lifetime, let's let go. Like you said with your nephew, maybe you should have let go at 12, but he hung on for a couple of years, and it wasn't a whole lot of fun. But then he finally let go.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a should. I think that we each go. I think about many circumstances where I've had to kind of come to a place of suffering before I was willing to let go. But that's one of the purposes of pain, actually, is that it makes us willing to let go. Ultimately, of our life in the end, but through the little deaths that happen as we let other things go in our life and accept, and hopefully be satisfied and fulfilled with what is. And it's an interesting thing. So, I was born with the burden of potential. I had a lot of possibilities and potentials of things, and I felt an incredible burden, a responsibility to do something with those gifts. And there was a period of time where I was actually kind of imploded and frozen by the weight of that responsibility, that I needed to aim for the stars all the time. It was more than I could handle and more than I wanted, actually, although I felt this like responsibility and guilt if I didn't do it. And I think about the beginning of my spiritual path, and this is the antithesis of what we're talking about, perhaps, but I was actually instructed to me to try to be average. I actually was in one of my spiritual practices was to get a C in one of my courses at college, because I was always aiming for A's and I was good at getting A's. And it was actually an expansion for me to learn to be average, and to just relax that bird and that constant push to be better, which was actually insatiable. Like there would never be enough. It's like social media. Like how many likes is enough? How many followers is enough? Like it's it's never satisfied. And to practice, this is the letting go piece, to practice being satisfied with what is in my life, and myself as I am, even if I don't win the race or get the A, or to put in my good effort. It was actually more of an effort for me to try to be average than it was for me to try to be outstanding. So there was actually an interesting reverse growth for me in to come out of the rat race of competition, to try to rise to to be the best, just because I had to often be the best just to feel average and to just allow myself to just be like everybody else, and that was okay. That's a really interesting, not as actually the principle, but that's some of my perspective on it in an interesting way.
Yeah, I mean, with our children, I think it's important for us to, um, have an authentic discussion with them about their performance. Forget about the outcome of what you did, but do you feel that you did your best? Is there something you could have done differently? Is there something you could have done better? And, we don't care that you got a C, but how do you feel about it? Was it challenging for you? Could you have done something differently? Could you studied more? But that's about letting go of the outcome and worrying about it, as you said. I feel validated by the amount of effort that I put in, and I don't need to get more than that. But I achieved my average, and I'm happy with that.
So we've talked throughout the series, we always talk about really knowing and paying attention to the authenticity and the soul of the unique soul of our children and ourselves. Of course, that's the co-work, because it's hard to, if you can't see it in yourself, you probably can't see it in someone else. But anyway, think of a client that I had yesterday, and who is in a very achievement-oriented culture. His father and mother, both lifelong, very hard workers, have accrued a lot of money. His wife is also a corporate genius, making lots and lots of money. And he's an artist and a very spiritual person, very energetically attuned. He's just started to be attuned to Reiki, which is a form of Japanese energy healing, and really feels things very deeply, and started a company based on his art, and felt quite overrun by it, and the expectations to like produce money. And he did this inner journey, just asking for his own inner wisdom, and he came on a castle. And the front of the castle, it had stocks in front of it, and everybody's dredging along. And the rules of the culture in the front of the castle is you must work 40 to 50 hours a week and make very little money. And that you must be depleted by everything that you do. That's like the rules that he felt from this place. And if you deviate from the rules, you're thrown out. And then he noticed a little path. And he took the path around the castle. And the castle was just kind of a facade. And on the back of the castle is this beautiful orchard and forest and a river that you have to cross. And his spirit guide, who happens to be an animal, met him there. And they both just kind of relaxed in the sunshine on the grass. And he said, "This feels like home for me." And he felt like he was dangling, when we went back out front, he was dangling this like false self that was kind of just like a skin mask in front of himself, trying to act like everybody else. And when he dropped that deadness and went back and just connected with nature and the idea of bounty and abundance, and his art, he'll often paint. Well, he said the day before we met, he said, "I painted all day, and I came in, I had a really, really productive day painting." And my wife said, "When are you going to do some real work?" Right? Different value structures of what his personal best, what he's good at, is really undervalued in our culture. And so it's an interesting thing to think about what our personal best is. I have a lot of divergent friends, so people that have quit high school, and their personal best was actually to go do something completely different that was outside of the culture. So it's an interesting thing to really open that up outside of being approved of by others, which is a lot of what our culture is about, getting A's, from some teacher who is assessing you, or a boss that's assessing you. It's all about pleasing externally, people who are assessing us, or competing and beating others, as opposed to what actually feels authentic for us and what may be best for him, maybe to really rest in peace and abundance in the energy and spirit of the universe. That was a lot of talking, but.
Well, no, you brought up a very important point. I think within the arts, being authentic is probably the most important in that area, because when artists are authentic, their works really have a value that other people can see, and feel, whether it's in music or in sculpture or painting or other areas of art. Authenticity is so important. I have a painting here next to me of a artist who, when I went to visit him, he had a 4-story house, farmhouse, filled with his paintings. Not on the wall, stacked on the floor, just completely filled.
Yeah.
He wasn't into selling them, he was into painting them, and they were all gorgeous and beautiful. But they came from him, and he these thousands of paintings in his house, he could tell the story behind each one of them. And he left this world with a beautiful history of all these wonderful images that came from him. Yeah.
It's an interesting, so what is to set high expectations for our children and then to let go of the outcome? I also think about my 2 children are very, very different. One of them is on the autism spectrum, and the other one is beautiful and, an A student and very successful in our culture. And they had the same expectations. They were brought up in the same house and turned out completely differently. And both have very different expectations from themselves. My son is actually brilliant in the places that he's brilliant. And he's in a college that certainly supports and nourishes that brilliance. But, he said, I actually want to be an electrician, like his father and his grandfather before him. He said, the academic world, I find it tiring. And I'd rather just be I would rather just be an average person. I don't care to stand out or pursue those things. So it's an interesting thing, because I'm like, you should write a book, you should start a YouTube channel, you should like me, because that's all the stuff I do. And he said, no, I don't really have interest or energy for that. So some of our personal best people are complicated, and there's many aspects to us. So just because we have a particular talent, we may not have the emotional energy or the organizational skills or the time management, all those things together we have to put together to actually make something happen. So it is a question mark of what our best is, and again, how to set high expectations. I think for me, some of the expectations that I really want to set is I really want my children to be happy and fulfilled. I think that's really, and to seek that for themselves.
You asked that question kind of rhetorically, but when I look at my friends, they have specific outcomes that they're looking for their children. They're going to graduate from this school, they're going to go into this profession. And that's the thing I think that we make a big mistake on. Because I've met people who've gone down that path, have followed the visions of their parents, and 10 years of working in the industry where their parents thought they should work. They're lost. They're not happy. They're they haven't met your goal that you are setting for your children. So by letting go of that outcome, and looking at, making sure that our children are being fulfilled in their lives, let them choose their outcome once they get there, which gives them the fulfillment that they need in their life. And if that fulfillment is, being an electrician or being a painter, or that can be a very fulfilling position, because that's a job that I don't have to take anything home with me, and then I can concentrate on my art. I can concentrate on my music. I don't have to take a bunch of baggage home with me at the end of the day.
That's how it was for me when I cleaned houses for 12 years. I mean, that was after all, that was some of the once I got that permission to just be a regular person. And then I was introduced to Buddhism and the idea of just really being present, that the ego attachments of who I think I should be, that somehow I'm an electrician as opposed to I'm a Renee, right? Or I'm an artist as opposed to I'm a Bobby, like that I'm here to just be a Renee who might do art, right? Or might make YouTube videos or whatever it is that we do. And to not attach my worth and value as a person to my bank account, to my job. I mean, which many of it, just culturally, I think my kids went to Catholic school, and as many do in San Francisco, and they start talking about college, the kids. They start talking about what high school they're going to go to when they're in 3rd grade with each other. What high school? Because there's a whole competitive thing. Same in New York. You have to apply to get into high schools, and then they start talking about college freshman year. And some of the schools put it. We went to a Jesuit high school, and a freshman year they're like, college night for parents, preparatory. I'm like, wait, that's 4 years away. Like, wait a minute. Can we just be in freshman year? Like, I don't, and now we just went through the college process, and some of it's a machine. I have to say, some of the schools, it's a $500,000 debt for these kids who may not even be pursuing something that they are going to enjoy. I question the machine of the system, and as parents, how can we really get present with the expectations that we have, and perhaps even protect our children from the cultural norms and expectations, which may be unhealthy. It mostly has to do with externals and not internals. Right. So I think about many people who went to Vassar or, Stanford or whatever, and they get the fancy job down in Silicon Valley, and they get the Tesla and they get the apartment. I've had many of them come to me as clients, and they said, I'm at the top of the wall, but my ladder's against the wrong wall. Like this isn't what I want to do.
Right. Yes.
10 years in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's also, a question of what is the future going to look like in general. We're going through a phase of academic inflation where going to Vassar isn't enough. You've got to get your master's from Harvard before you can get your first job. And this keeps pushing and pushing and pushing for many of the professions. You need a master's, where when I graduated, you needed a bachelor's.
Right. And 50 years ago, you just needed a high school diploma.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. We'll see where the future evolves itself to. So how do we set high expectations and let go of the outcome? What can we give people to apply in their parenting into themselves?
Well, as we've talked about in the first episode, it's, helping your children to find their passions and pushing them to set high expectations for those. If it's drawing or if it's painting, just, get them to explore what their capabilities are. And, don't expect them to get a job as an architect just because they're a good drawer.
Mm-hmm.
Push them, just to see if it's something that they want to do as a vocation, or is it something they would want to do as just, killing time when they're having some extra time during the day. But help them explore those by, giving them high expectations, and just forget about, what it's going to lead to. Because that's what childhood's about, is exploration.
I think all of life is about that, actually. Yeah. And there's many
It
things
is,
I think
yes.
that it is challenging to explore if we don't let go of the outcome. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because there's some idea that like, oh, if I like writing, oh, well, I have to be a published author. Or if I enjoy, playing with video, that, oh, I have to have a famous YouTube channel. I have that there's some idea that we have to be like the best or famous or big, or otherwise it's meaningless, as opposed to just the experience. It's really what we got here is time and experience. And
Yeah. And nothing in life is a straight line. Um, when I was I think in second grade, everybody in my family said he was going to become an engineer. It's like, you know, I did become an engineer.
mhm,
But then that was just the first stop on the path.
right.
Uh,
Yeah. Following the path. We don't know what the outcome is. That's some of the letting go too. And to just trust the path.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. And the
Shawn.
people you meet along that path are just amazing if you let go of the outcome.
Yeah.
You can really run into some amazing people.
Again, that's the experience piece, right? Of what we value is and asking that deeper question, I suppose. What is the purpose? Is it to get the most toys and win? Or is it to be fulfilled and have loving, joyful, deep experiences? I vote for door number 2 myself, but
Well, the door number one is pursuing the outcome.
mhm.
And in pursuing the outcome, you end up um, making enemies, because you're always trying to be better than somebody else with the outcome. Door number two is where you are able to collaborate with others. You can value what they bring to the table, and you don't have to worry about being better than them.
Right. Excellent. Shawn, always good to talk to you. And in our next segment, we're going to talk about valuing success and failure.
Which is a good follow-on to this one.
Think so.
It's the important piece that we learn from all of our experiences.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Shawn, blessings on your work, and we will continue our series on spiritual parenting. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you again for segment number 5 of spiritual parenting.
Thank you, Renee.